are now ready to begin our session on what are we talking about? Can anyone else remember? Compact living, that's right. Compact living in the city. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, can you put your hands together, give a big round of applause to my expert panel. Welcome, guys. Come on. How are you all?
Good, yeah.
Okay, so someone needs to sit over here, unless you all want to try and squeeze on that. But you can, yeah.
Go on, we're in.
Come on, Joe, stop messing around. No, not in the gold chair.
It's like musical
I was going to go for the yellow one.
You're going to go and sit on my golden throne. No, don't do that. Guys, welcome. We've got a lot to get through, so I think what we should probably do is start with introductions. So, for the audience, please, can you introduce yourself? We'll start from this side. Oh, that mic's not on. Give it a moment.
So while you're waiting, my name is Deirdre. I am the founder of youfurnish.com. It's a search and discovery platform for furniture where you can find 110 retailers all on one site. John Lewis, Wayfair Made. We're over in stand B, 12B, so do come and say hi, and we're doing a great competition where you can win over £4,000 worth of furniture.
Should we try again?
Let's do it.
Hi everyone, I'm Lou Peterson and I'm the design director at DFS. So I run the design team there for all the in-house design and much of the UK manufacturing.
I'm Alicia Storie and I am a sustainable interior designer, and I'm on a platform called HiiGuru, which is a marketplace for interior design advice. And alongside this, I run my own interior design studio focusing on sustainability, which is called A Design Story.
I'm Joe. I run an architectural practice called Warehome, and we seem to work quite a lot with compact houses in the city. So I think that's why I've been invited along.
My name's Max McMurdo and I make things out of rubbish and live in a shipping container.
Not quite rubbish, though, is it?
Well, hopefully not once I've finished with it.
It makes it sound like you're going around rubbish dumps and taking it.
I do.
Okay, right, well, then he's right. It's rubbish. Okay, so I guess we'll start with Lou. When we're thinking about compact living, thinking about our homes. What's the most important thing to kind of get to grips with in terms of actually making that space multifunctional and making the most use of it?
Well, I think there's quite a lot to consider because you want your room to function as any size room, so you want to fit everything into a small space. I think from my perspective, considering your sofa is quite a big decision to make, especially if it's the living space, because you're going to be using it so much, and it's obviously the biggest thing in the room and the biggest investment that you'll make. So I think just start with trying to maximize the comfort and the seating and just take the time to plan, because it might feel like there's quite limited choice for you having a small space, but actually by definition sofas are made to measure. So if you look from a good retailer, you will find something that is the size that you want. And I think just be really careful when you choose the style of sofa, because the style of the arms or the width of the arms can have a really big impact on the size of seating that you're left with. So I think my go-to thing is to try and find something with more seating than arms. So something with a really slim arm and a really straight arm is going to give you more space. And then I think you can start to build around that once you've got that part of the design sorted. Yeah,
I mean, assuming you can get it into the room, which is normally the first challenge of buying a new sofa. How important is it to think about the size of your space and the size of the individual items of furniture?
Well, I think it's really important. I think you have to decide how you're going to use the room. I think just going back to if you can get it in the room, I think you'd be surprised at how many types of and shapes of sizes of doors and rooms that our delivery guys have seen. They've usually had most challenges, and I think what you can find is if your space is really tight and on a top floor, go for something boxed. So boxed sofas are pretty commonplace now. So we have a range, I think it was flashing up just now, called Box It, and the sofa comes in a box. So if you're worried about getting it through an entryway or up and round some stairs, then go for something in a box. You know, we spend a lot of time making sure that the comfort isn't compromised. And you can put it together with one Allen key in 3 steps. So there will be something for you, even if your space is really tight. But I would say go for something with enough seating so that you can enjoy the space, and then build around from that. So perhaps smaller side tables, or really clever side tables that come over the arms, or just kind of think about what you'll be doing in that space and build the furniture choices around it.
There's a lot more multifunction furniture around now, isn't there?
There's so many, and it's really amazing when you can see desks that transform into beds. You've got extendable dining tables. So if you're living, this is a great example here, it's a desk that transforms into your dining table. It's available from one of our furniture retailers on youfurnish.com. But I think the whole thing about transformable furniture, and it can be the sofa, which is a great example. I've got a great DFS sofa in my house, and there's a chaise, so you can put your feet up, so you don't have to buy an extra coffee table, but also you can lift it up and save lots of storage. So storage to me is the biggest thing. I live in a small 2-bed apartment in London, or the shoebox as I call it. So having storage built into your beds, if you're having ottomans into the arms of sofas these days, you can have it built into your coffee table, ottomans that you're using for footstools, again, all lift up and have that storage element. So really think about where you're going to be able to store things away. And even if you don't have storage, because some things we all have in our homes, mine is my other half's bike, can you create a bit of a shelter around it? So room dividers that actually you can just put over different areas. If you've got a desk in the corner at evening, put the room divider over the side of it, so it sort of transforms it at night, and it just cuts it off so that you can enjoy your living space without looking at your desk.
Are you finding that you're finding more clients asking, in terms of interior design, for ideas around flexible furniture and flexible use of a space?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a massive shift towards this, especially through the pandemic, when we spent so much time at home. We really had to maximise these spaces to be multi-use, to be a yoga studio, an office, a place to relax. So it's really created a movement in this flexibility aspect of a space. I've recently designed a tiny house in the Highlands in Scotland, and the whole space unfolds in different forms to meet different functions. So it's a lounge area, it's an extra bedroom, it's a dining space, and this seems to be a trend which is based on the situation.
And do you think it's the case for, I mean, I know this talk is entitled Compact Living, but actually, how important is it to have flexible space even if your house is not necessarily compact,
Yeah.
it's big?
Personally, I think it's essential because it increases the lifespan of a project, because our needs are constantly evolving. So if you make a decision now, that's great. But if you can project how you might be using the space in the future, maybe your family will grow, maybe you're going to move house and that furniture will come with you. So I think it's essential in general as well, depending if you live small living or larger scale.
Joe, famously, you designed and built, a relatively small house,
Yep.
but it's very functional. What did you have to think about in terms of achieving that goal?
So I think it's sort of layering of things. So we went with a very much a blank canvas approach to the architecture prior to then how we dress the space. So, the typical getting enough light, using like clean, I guess constant surfaces, white walls to start with, things that then allow you to then sort of populate it with your artifacts, be it your furnishings, be it sort of textures, fabrics, whatever it is that you're bringing either from your previous home or new things you're buying to fit that home. But when we're looking at the space and how people use it, there's that, as you say, that the longevity. Like, I don't use the house. There was an image earlier of ours. I don't use it the same way that I used it 2 years ago, and the reason being, 2 years ago we had a table that's 900 or 925 high to match the kitchen height, so that our friends could sit around. I can chop up all the vegetables and the food at the same level while standing. They can have a glass of wine, and I can just be turning around and using that kitchen space. So it becomes a sort of a social space while cooking. Now we've got a 7-month-old kid, and we don't, there isn't a high chair that fits with that. So we've dropped the table down, and that works in a different way now that we're using that space as a family space. So I think making sure that the storage is in the right places. So in our case, we use the walls and the transitions between spaces to be where that storage is, be it in the sofas, under sofas. I guess it's, and also decluttering to a degree. The quality of every metre squared is more important than the quantity of them. So as your question earlier about as you grow or have a bigger space, well, it doesn't matter if you've got 50 square metres or 500 square metres. You don't want to just walk into a room and just hear echo, echo. You want to feel like it's a home. And so actually sometimes a few more things in there that are, I guess, those personal artefacts help.
The more storage that you have, the more stuff you will collect. So
Exactly.
I agree with that.
You're absolutely right about that. Max, now you live on a boat, is that right?
Well, it's a floating shipping container that
floating
is still floating 5 years on. People will be pleased to hear, because I did nearly sink it when I tried to float it originally on Amazing Spaces. But yeah, and I'm completely with Joe. I usually have a bit of a dig at architects at this stage, so I'm going to be careful because you're within. Are you not? Okay. No. Because I did famously quote to George Clark that all architects are rubbish because they're still using bricks, and I don't like bricks. So I got a steel shipping container, 40-footer, floated it at Bedford Marina. Made a few mistakes along the way, one of which was I just put lovely big bifold doors, which look fantastic for the view, but then forgot that the air doesn't know that I want it to come in, circulate, and go back out again. I needed to put a window in the back to create that through draw of air, and there's far too much sunlight during the day, which is wonderful, but it gets stifling hot. So, and insulation works both ways. I didn't realise that. I thought insulation just keeps you warm, but it also keeps you cool in the hot days. So lots of mistakes made, but I loved it. And I think the challenge of small space design is what excites me. Anyone can design a big house, can't they? It's a little house where you've got to think so innovatively. Like when I walk in my front door, I physically, when it was an empty container, I pretended to live in it. So I pretended to cook a meal. Where do I want the fridge? Where do I want the sink? Where do I want all of the items? And then when I walk in the door, you want to take your dirty shoes off, don't you? So there's a little step that you kick. It pings open. My slippers are in there. I step into the step, slip out of my shoes, into my slippers. And like little things like that, just thinking about how we live and how we use a space.
Sounds like Batman. Like, when he used to sit in that chair and then he just get changed.
I'm a James Bond villain.
With your siblings. But interestingly, and I was working with the client doing a lot of work on sort of changeable furniture. A lot of the things that I saw, the inspiration came from ships and boats. Things the way you've got tables that turn into beds and beds that turn into tables, etc., etc.
Yeah. And I do have a new DFS sofa bed, actually, which, this is embarrassing. So when you deliver them, they have to deliver them into the house, don't they?
We have our limits, okay?
Yeah.
So
obviously, living on a houseboat with a very small gate at the end of the pontoon, they had to leave it for me, and I had to put it on 2 paddle boards, turned it into a catamaran, paddled it round back onto my houseboat, and the guys just went, "We're going to leave you to this. Like, this isn't our normal delivery service, I'm afraid."
they've seen most things, but I think they probably draw the line at paddle
It was
boards,
brilliant.
but
Honestly, just sat on my new sofa, paddling across the marina.
where there's a will, there's a way, right?
I should have got the one in a box.
That is incredible. That is absolutely, incredible. But so, had you always wanted to live on a boat, or was that?
I think so. I always wanted to just think differently. So with whether it's upcycling, making chairs out of pallets or roll-top baths, whatever it is, I always just question, much like everyone else here, I imagine, is it currently done the correct way? Is there another way to do it? And actually, when you look at the small space of a shipping container, for £2,000, I got a home delivered to me, and I spent less than 50 in total, including all the fixtures and fittings, including the pontoon that it floats on. So I'm completely mortgage-free, but I do like the challenge as well. The challenge of small space design is fantastic.
Yeah.
So one of the things that irritated me, when you go around people's houses, they have 20 taps or 10. How many taps have you got? Have a little count up in your head. How many do you think you've got?
All right, keep talking, I'll keep counting.
I've got one. So I've got a piece of scaffold tube and a brown leather belt. I had to replace the leather belt, obviously. And basically, how embarrassing is that? 10 taps in one house.
10.
What do you need 10 for?
How many have you got?
3.
I've got one. So basically, the kitchen and the bathroom.
3 floors.
Oh, right, okay. My kitchen and bathroom deliberately back onto each other. So I've got one big butler sink that goes through the wall. So I've got one sink, and then the tap tilts one way or the other. So I thought I just want to minimise everything I own, including the number of taps. You're all counting how many taps you've got now, aren't you? And I bet most of you have got double figure taps.
I've actually got 11 if I count the outside tap as well.
Oh, you're such a show-off.
I know. I feel awful now. Has anybody got more than 11?
Who thought it would come to this
win.
at Grand Designs
I win.
Live, counting taps?
Look at that, I win. That sounds awful. You're right, I shouldn't have. But I didn't, oh, this is brilliant, actually. Sorry, I'm going to jump through. So Max showed me this earlier, and I just thought this was incredible. It looks like a magic trick. So that's a table, right?
So that's my dining table
Well, actually,
outside.
I'll let you describe it, Max.
Have we got the video?
Oh, well, we've got the video.
I loved it. So I made this on the weekend workshop, a show for Discovery, and it was one of those designs where I thought, in my head, this works, but as I assembled it flat pack on the workbench, and it worked actually for the first time, I became so happy. So you can leave the settings, the place settings out, and then it rotates and all the shelves stay horizontal.
Great.
And I'd seen it on Instagram or somewhere. I thought, I'm going to build one of those. And when it worked, honestly, I was look at my little face.
I didn't believe him. And then I said, no, you've just taken those off. And then he showed me the video. And this is the video. Just watch this. This is incredible.
Thank you very much. I'm going now.
That's brilliant. I mean, it does look like a magic trick. It's incredible.
Well, you can see it at the show as well. If you go over to Furl, they've got a bed with shelves.
I was gonna say,
And as you bring it down, the shelves, so even your laptop and everything stays the same on it.
And this is open to anybody, I mean, do you think that COVID, having to work from home, made a difference? Because all of a sudden we had to sort of eke out a different use in whatever way we could, be it the third bedroom, the living room, the kitchen.
You've got a third bedroom. I'm
And
jealous.
11
He's
taps.
got 11 taps, yeah.
Someone's doing all right in their throne.
We haven't asked him how many showers he's got.
Clearly you don't live in a compact house.
Okay, this is not about me. It's not about me.
I
Yeah.
think absolutely though. So I've got a 2-bed, I live with my husband and we both work from home. In fact, we work in the same business. So it's all very cozy, living together, working together 24/7. I'm in the spare bedroom and all of a sudden I don't need a spare bedroom, I need an office. And he's in the kitchen. So I get very dirty looks when I come in to turn on the kettle. So now I keep looking at cooker thinking, I just need a hot water tap so he's not complaining that the kettle is making noise. But we've got these dining rooms, we've got extra bedrooms. It's so much space that we never use. And all of a sudden we're cramming functionality, a little side table down the side of a bed where we should be thinking how we use our homes first off. And then your guests that come, 2-3 nights a year, they don't need a room. I want to use that space for something a lot more functional. And then I have a sofa bed or I can accommodate them in other ways. So I'm now thinking much more selfishly, how am I going to use my space because it's my home? And the guests can adapt. And if they don't want it, they can go find someplace else to stay.
Okay.
I think also the growth of sofa beds as well. So throughout the pandemic, you didn't know when you would see people, and now you want to be really prepared. And we're noticing a lot of customers just making their main lounge or anywhere they can put a sofa, just trying to incorporate a sofa bed, because you just want to be ready. If somebody wants to come and visit, you want them to be able to, because we had so long of not knowing that idea of being more prepared and spontaneous has really taken hold. I think the other thing that we're doing more of is integrating technology into sofas. So the more you can integrate into the sofa, the less things you have around, the more you can make the space feel bigger or use that space for something else. So charging cables and lighting and all kinds of things are now fully integrated into the sofas, and we're finding that they're just really growing in popularity.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you think about it, the sofa bed was the first piece of flexible furniture that we all kind of accepted, and that we've all used. But there's so many more options now, aren't there? I mean, are you finding that your interior clients are asking for, desks that turn into shelving or beds and etc.?
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of products out there as well. There's a product I saw a couple of days ago which was really interesting, and it was essentially a dining table which pushes down to a coffee table, so you can change the configuration of the room to a more informal to a dining space, which I thought was really clever. Also a lot of kind of joinery elements with flip down beds, so you can have a bookshelf and then the bed within. So yeah, definitely on the number of requests on this kind of thing is just skyrocketed.
And also use of space. I mean, this is just examples of some houses that I visited as part of a competition, and They're just there because, especially the one on the, that side, that's that kind of, that weird turning circle in a corridor, in a kind of landing that was normally just, not really used very much, but they've put a desk in there, and that's their office. So I think it's changed the way that we're thinking about
That's it.
space. I mean, Joe, you did that from when you designed your home. You had to do that. You did that anyway.
Yeah.
You thought about every inch of your space and what you were going to use it for. But now, I mean, we're all starting to do that now.
Yeah, I'm finding as well. We've probably now done 4 or 5 more projects where they're all within that sort of 70 to 100 square meters.
Yeah.
And people want 2 or 3 bedrooms. And we've even seen ones where actually a couple of my clients are here today, and we adopted a project from a different architectural practice. And the way that we've interpreted that space, it's so sort of, it's chalk and cheese. They've looked at it the conventional. We need these rooms. We need these very specific areas. And we've said, hang on a minute, it's a bit of a rabbit warren here. You're semi in the ground anyway. We want light running through. How do we make the space work for what you're, as you're saying, what you're doing 300 days of the year and not the 65 that you've got other people around? And yeah, they do like to have a party. They have a whole family around and they want to be able to sleep 10 or 12 people. But there's the sofa, there's the dining table that drops down like a boat on the 2 pistons. There's wall dividers that are going to pull across. There's an office space where they can work from home, come bed. Also, come second place to watch TV because they get a bit annoyed. If you can hear me, I'm sorry. When Made in Chelsea's on in the room because their kid comes to visit, and actually they want to have some what they call adult TV. So I think sometimes it's about making spaces more open if you can, especially if you're designing from scratch, and then dividing it in the way that works. So hiding away your desk afterwards so you can go, right, work has gone to bed now, that's fine. Or just sort of even just pivoting in a space, but allowing yourself the lines of sight, sometimes level changes. I mean, that's what worked really well for us was none of our rooms are longer than 4 or 5 meters long, but we've got a view that goes out a couple of windows that is as far as the next house. And it's just those lines of sight get rid of the claustrophobia of living in a small, tight environment.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, I've been to like Copeland Road one that you've got on the right-hand side. The journey to their little office is lovely, and there's little snippets of the space downstairs. And I think some of those little quirks are what makes that place really pleasant, regardless of how big it is.
Yeah. I mean, Max, you were famous for upcycling and giving things new leases of life, but this is a great way of you don't necessarily have to go out and buy some fancy new gizmo in order to make your space more flexible, do you?
No, it's even more fun when you make it yourself, I think. There's that chopping board there that I created because I get frustrated by oversized chopping boards. It's amazing what I get frustrated about. But
they are huge, some of them, though.
Yeah.
They are absolutely huge.
Needlessly so.
Yeah.
So I designed this one made out of an old scaffold board. And the other thing was it's got the little scoop cut out so you can separate the bits that you want from the bits that you don't want. So, but you can make it yourself for like £3 or whatever a piece of wood costs. So I would encourage people to, consider making your own, whether it's herb planters out of old pallets. There's some really simple upcycling projects for small spaces that lend themselves to a small space, but also a small budget. And you learn new skills, you learn DIY and stuff. So it's just a win-win, isn't it?
And I'm guessing, because you've got a new show coming out.
Tool Club. I'm in the middle of filming it right now. I'm driving to Llanelli tonight. Don't feel sorry for me, it's fine. It'll be out in September. Basically, we drive around in my double-decker bus, for real as well, that I've converted into a workshop, and we teach people DIY. So we do some really nice transformations, but we don't do it for the clients. We teach them to do it for themselves, which is utterly, utterly brilliant. Yeah, it's an amazing show. Empowering
the nation to take control of their space. Yeah.
You're welcome.
I didn't thank you. Of course, thank you very much. Wonderful work. In terms of innovations, you talked about the way that you guys at DFS are innovating how we think about sofas and what they can do. What about other items, of furniture in the house?
Well, I think the logical kind of link for us is beds. So really thinking about beds a bit differently. And any dead space, I think it's the same to your point. If anything is oversized or there's dead space within the product, we're really keen to understand how you can turn that into something useful for customers. So in its very basic level, it's, Ottoman storage beds and things like that, but incorporating into the headboard things that you need so that you don't need extra pieces of furniture if your rooms aren't very wide. But I think it's just that constant challenge of, does it serve a purpose, or can we turn it into something useful? And I think that's the journey that we're on at the moment, just trying to help people get more than the basic function from their products is always kind of what's on our mind when we're designing something new.
Are you seeing the same on your site, that the innovation in terms of multi-use furniture is just keeps moving forward all the time?
Yeah, 100%. You've really seen since COVID searches for multifunctional furniture, because we want to use our spaces in very different ways. And one of the big trends as well that we've seen is actually a shift to outdoors, because when we did have friends over, we had to meet them outdoors. So how can we have things like heaters to make our outdoor space more usable? If you've got a balcony and you live in a small apartment, or you've got a small yard, what you're seeing is the usage of the same flooring from your kitchen out to your yard. So it feels like all one space when it's warm enough to be outside. That outdoor use of furniture, the use of outdoor rugs now as well, so it feels like a room. And if you've got a small balcony, all of a sudden you turn it into a little garden room, and rather than a space that you use 3 or 4 times a year when it's warm enough to be out there, you can be out there so much more often. And a lot of the furniture now is made for multifunction, so it can be indoor and outdoor. All of a sudden you can have cushions that you can leave outside. They can get rained on, your rug can get rained on, but all of a sudden you've got so much more space.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important because people might think this is all about, buying some fancy new table that changes into something else. But actually, and sort of Joe alluded to it a bit, it's like thinking about, well, how do I use the table I've already got? And, so in our house, we got a huge dining table, but we said, well, we don't need to get a desk. We'll just use that. And we just moved it in a slightly different position. And so that becomes our desk, but it's also, still our dining table. So how much of it is about just rethinking about the usage of the furniture you already have?
Yeah, I think it's massively about that. Whenever I do a project with a client, the first thing I do is ask them to look at the existing space and see what works and try and keep as much as possible. It brings down the cost, and of course it's much more sustainable to do this. And then you can tailor items, of course, to suit like slight modifications, have a go yourself, or employ an upcycler to do this for you. And then also looking at sourcing something secondhand as well, because you can get some fantastic elements, like for example, some of the things that Joe mentioned, like even room dividers, like bookshelves, fantastic to find secondhand, and secondhand stuff is often very high quality, built to last. So yeah. It doesn't have to be all the fancy gadgets of the tables going up and down. That's a nice thing, but you can find existing furniture and customise it yourself.
Because, I mean, is it the case that, some of our rooms might actually be, and it sounds weird, but too big, for what we actually use them for? So we should think about dividing them and having multiple uses in them.
Well, it's that, and also just, I mean, if you're in a position where you're either renovating a house, like moving walls around, and it's understanding what you use a space for. And I think, again, this is just an opinion, but a bedroom is for that. It's for sleeping. So putting a 72-inch TV at the end of the bed for me just seems nonsensical, because you're going there to relax, to turn off. So how big does it need to be? And the minimum standards say 11 square meters, and some people think, well, I want a 25 square meter bedroom, but what are you doing with all that extra space? And I think that could be reappropriated into the spaces you use, subdivided out, reappropriated so that you don't have so many travelling spaces. I mean, like typical old Victorian houses, you walk and you lose basically 1.5 meters down the majority of the length of the building to get to the back of the house, and there's little rooms on the side, but that's not incorporated, it's not felt in those other rooms. So everything feels to be sort of off this avenue, and that's where I think if you've got the luxury of doing a new build, removing these spaces is easy. If you're doing a renovation, it's about saying, well, what is the journey? When people come into the house, do we need them to walk all the way to the back to then get to the sofa, or should we be actually inviting people in and enjoying the time there? I think that's probably more key than anything else when you're looking at these sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we just kind of stuck on these ideas of rooms being bigger. Like we think, I meet people all the time and I always say to them, I met a client recently and they were saying, we need an extension. And I said, why do you need an extension? And it's, it's so that I can have a dining table and so that I can cook and watch the kids in the garden. And I said, okay, but so what you want is to be able to watch the kids in the garden and have a dining table. If we could do that, then you wouldn't need an extension, right? But they jumped to the solution. And we have this thing, we're inbuilt to believe that if we've got a problem with our home, the solution is more home. But, it's not necessarily the case.
No.
Yeah.
I've often thought that my 40-foot shipping container, sometimes I think this is a monstrosity. It's far too big. Yeah. If I'm sat there in a lounge watching telly, the bedroom's empty, the kitchen's empty, the bathroom's empty, I could have a homeless person sleeping there. It feels a little bit opulent, a little bit greedy. And also last year during lockdown, I built a camper van. So I got an old ambulance and converted that. And there's plenty of space. I could live in that, actually, and that's a third or a quarter of the size of my home. So
I saw that. You had that in October up in NEC, didn't you?
That's right, yeah. And you say about the beds for sleeping in, but in there I was going to build a lounge area and have the double bed. Yeah. And then I realised, actually, just lounge in bed. Like, open the back doors of the camper van, lounge in bed. And so that was proper multifunctional. And there's a little pull-out dining area. There's a full-size shower. It's amazing what you can get into a small space.
Yeah. Well, when they say, so the minimum standards for a two-bedroom house, 79 or 83 square metres, depending which sort of what you look at. And so I've got an 83 square metre house, but we don't live in 83 square metres because we've got a spare bedroom.
It's impossible.
We've got our basement space is, it's actually like a gym space now. And so I use that when I go down there. But the rest of the time, for 23 hours of the day, it's just empty. And we're living on the top floor, which is probably 30 square metres, probably less space than you've got in your shipping container because we're about 10 metres long, 9.5 metres long by 4 metres wide. And that's enough. And we've got two of us and a kid, and we did have a big Rhodesian Ridgeback, and that was fine. So I think, sometimes we can be a bit opulent, like you say.
Yeah. I mean, space saving is important, isn't it? In terms of, thinking about... Because it allows you not only to saving space, means you can utilise it in a better way.
Yeah, I think, like we said before, storage is everything. I think... although the more storage you have, the more stuff you kind of attract. But I think you want your house to provide you what you want to do. So I think we're increasingly seeing people move away from big open plan spaces, more broken plan living, so partially open, but still has like some dividing wall between the spaces. And for the last few years, we've seen sofa sizes really grow, like really enormous sofas. And we're having to put more interest along the back of sofas because people can see the backs of sofas now. But I think what we're seeing again is a bit of a contraction of space as people start using their spaces for things they want to do. So if they want a yoga space or a massage room or somewhere to play darts, whatever it is, you want to create that house for the things that you want to do in it because that's what life is now. Life is at home. You're not going out to the gym. You want to do it at home and have all the things around you. So I think space and clever storage all comes into play so that you can have a home that kind of supercharges you with the things that you love rather than just becomes a bit of a drag and a place to clean or forever be putting things away because people have realised that they've just got better things to do with their time.
So
break the boundaries as well, though, in terms of what you think is conventional. So I need at least a 2-seater or a 3-seater sofa. You're so far away from me, I can't even touch you. So if I had a snuggler sofa, depending upon how I'm going to use the room, do I need to have a dining table? Do I use a dining table? Do I need a 2-3-seater sofa? Maybe I don't. Maybe I'm happy with a chair because I can snuggle up in it. So again, try and think about how you're going to use the space rather than thinking conventionally, I need XYZ because that's how it's always been done.
And also be honest with yourself about how you really use the space as opposed, like when we did our kitchen, it's not very big. And I thought, well, we've got this huge dining table, so if I need more chopping space, I'll just use the dining table. And that's what we do, and it's fine, and it's fun. We've only got about 10 minutes left. So if there's any questions, just raise your hands. If not, I've got some questions for the panels. So I've dropped this on them. But I was just going to ask very quickly, out of all the space-saving things and gizmos and gadgets or innovations you've seen, what's the one that you like the most? I'm going to start with Max. You can't say anything that you built.
Oh, I was
what,
just going to
someone
sing my
else's?
own praises.
No, go on, sing your own praises. Then go on.
Tell me yours, I'll tell you mine.
Okay, yeah. No, so the favourite thing I've got in the houseboat is an ottoman bed, actually. So I was very fortunate. I built it myself. I do apologise. But I was very fortunate. I got a high cube shipping container, so I've got a false floor at 500 mil. So all of my storage is in the ground. So in the lounge, the dining table pops out of the floor. In the bathroom, there's a shower. There's a bath under the shower tray, and in the bedroom, there's a walk-in wardrobe under my bed. The wardrobe works fantastically. If you remember the show, then there was a little scene that was a little bit fake. Actually, I pretended to turn a drill. It was actually just held against a wall. And we hid a runner from the TV production company under the floorboards, and he had to pull this rope, and it looked like my dirty laundry went from under my bed to the washing machine, and it didn't. So that was my biggest failure, was that just never worked. Now there's just a mop and bucket in there now. It looks great on the show, though, honestly.
It did look great on the show. It was fantastic. Joe, what about you?
So not something that we've...
No, it can be. I was joking. That was just for Max, because I knew he was going to say something he did.
I was going to say, one of the things that I feel worked the best was the removal of landing spaces and using a sort of what is actually sort of very simply used in like 60s high rises, but a staircase that goes back on itself. But instead of it being then there's someone's flat and then there's someone's flat, it's just your room to room. So if you want to feel like the space is bigger, you can have a door open, and you know, I can be lying in bed and I can be looking up and seeing out a panoramic window that is half a floor up and beyond. And I think that's made the space feel bigger, so that you don't feel each room has to be a given distance. So I think that's sort of key, just having those lines of sight, if you can create them.
Okay, cool.
So I would say, so if you look at a floor plan normally and you're designing in the storage, you think about it from that perspective, and you think about how much space it claims on the plan width-wise. But if you think about vertically as well, you can get in compact flats, there often is a fair bit of head height, especially if it's a Victorian flat or something. So making the most of all those voids, and you can create inbuilt storage or modular furniture to go into these high level areas, and you gain a lot of space there.
Fantastic.
So mine is my sofa I got from DFS, but it's a chaise, so I can put my feet up. And I have a floor-to-glass window that in my apartment that looks out, so I can look out and see nature and very much appreciate the outdoors. The chaise lifts up, and there's all storage underneath where I can store additional items when I'm not using them. And then on the other side, it's actually a sofa bed, so it comes out, and you can have two people stay there whenever you need. So the ability to have all that functionality in one piece of furniture. And it's also quite neat looking, because I've got this one big room, sort of kitchen into dining room into living room, so it doesn't take up too much space. So I didn't want one that was super bulky. So I fit loads of functionality, but yeah, it still looks glamorous in my opinion.
I feel like I should pick a YouFurnish product now just to repay the...
Well, we don't have any products. We just deal with all the furniture retailers.
I think for me, it's probably a few hacks that I've applied to my spaces over the years. And I think the first thing that I often do when I move house is put shelving over the doors for like cookbooks and things. Like, you never realise how many big cookbooks and things that you have, and you kind of think, oh, I'll cook something out of that one day, and you can't bear to get rid of them because there's a recipe in there that you did once. And so I tend to put little shelves above the doors, and you get a really good kind of space saving, because books can take up so much space. I think the other thing that I've started to do recently is more vertical radiators, so it just frees up the wall a bit more for pieces of furniture, and the heating kind of comes out into the room and circulates a bit better. So really slim, but kind of more floor to ceiling, so that I've got more wall space to have the furniture against.
For me, it's not anything I've got in my house, but it's something that I saw these American guys, architects, did it. It's basically a movable wall, which allowed them to create. It was effectively the size of a studio. So they had a bed that went up into the wall, like you see in those old American films. But they had this wall that moved, so that on the other side of it, as you moved open, there was like some bunk beds that came down. And the idea was that even though it was this small space, why should people compromise? So it was kind of like, well, I want friends to come over to stay. So they built these bunk beds in that wall. I want to have, 8 people over for dinner. So part of this table then sort of expanded into like a big table, and you moved the wall all the way the other way, so they had this big dining space, and it was fantastic actually. And it was, having lived in some small kind of studio apartments when I was younger, I kind of wished I had something like that, because my old studio apartment was just a bed, and you never invite anybody around because there was no space. So there you go. If there are no questions, are there any questions? That must mean that we've answered everybody's questions without them even knowing about that. So that's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, please, can you give a round of applause to our expert panel? Thank you very much for joining us.